Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the simple workforce management software for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Will Corby, Director of Coffee and Social Impact at Pact Coffee. Coming up on today's show, Will gets off to a slow start.
Yeah, I've only had 5 cups of coffee today.
Phil gives us some real-world philosophy. Well, nothing like a gun-toting gangster to put things into perspective. And Will transports us to a magical land.
We're going to turn into frogs when we eat this, aren't we?
All that and so much more as we chat through Will's amazing journey so far. What a total joy it was to get some time with Will, and for someone who started out his career not liking coffee, he's done not half bad. To learn more about what Pact are doing was a real eye-opener, and I am sure that you're all going to take so much away from this chat. So please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like and a share wherever you can. Enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Will Corby.
Hey Phil, how you doing?
I'm alright, how are you?
Fantastic.
Good. You seem super chilled.
Yeah, I've only had 5 cups of coffee today, so...
Okay, so you need 10 to get up to full energy.
Yeah, I'm nicely relaxed, nice and, got that nice warm feeling.
Yeah.
Good.
Got you. Is there a particular brand of coffee that you like?
There's this kind of niche brand, probably won't have seen it around about, Pact Coffee. Pretty outstanding.
I don't think I've heard of them. No, we probably should talk about that at some point. Then, no. I for the uninitiated out there, just tell the world what it is that you do. And I have to say, take a seat for this job title. This is a belter.
So I'm Director of Coffee and Social Impact at pactcoffee.com.
Kaboom! Yes. And what does that actually mean?
So my job is to go and travel the world, looking to find coffee farmers who have the capacity to grow the best coffee in the world, incentivize them to do that, work with local agronomists to work out how we're going to best frame profiles of coffee they can produce, import that coffee into the UK, into our Pact Coffee roastery. We maintain traceability throughout the supply chain and then ship that out to the tens of thousands of subscribers at home that Pact Coffee have in the UK, cafes, restaurants, hotels, and offices.
Fantastic. Yeah. And look, I am unashamedly a fanboy of what you guys are doing. And I can't even remember what you call it, but because I've been in with you guys pretty much from the outset, I think, am I a pioneer or something like that?
You are a pioneer. You're one of the important people that helped us to kind of create those initial relationships, build enough volume to really begin to get the ball rolling and to start doing real good. So you've got a very special relationship with us.
For sure. Long term now. What was the year of inception for Pact?
2012.
2012. Okay, 2012, wow. So 12 years now.
Yeah, and time is flying.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the thing for me is that, at a moment in time, you guys absolutely caught me with your marketing. I can't even remember what it would have been. It was probably Facebook or something. And I would have seen something. My wife and I love our coffee. And at the time, I think we were absolutely looking for something different. And what you guys stood for at that time, we were like, oh, this sounds amazing. So let's just give it a go. And I think critically, we were talking about this before we turned the microphone on. Like, it's one thing to have a real aim to make a social impact with what you're doing, but it's another thing to back that up with actually a really wonderful product. And there's no doubt in my mind, I find your coffee very difficult to top for many, many reasons. And I don't want to just make this about me blowing smoke up your backside, but I'll do it for a couple of minutes if you'll permit me, because I think the thing for me is that you've got a subscription service for us regular consumers, which is very flexible and it works around my life, which is pretty erratic, to be honest. But also, I think for me, fundamentally, it's just the variety. You've got so many different types of coffee that, like, you can't get bored.
Yeah. It's a privilege. And, like I said, you pioneers helped us to build the initial system, which allows us to work directly with individual coffee farmers and maneuver coffee literally across the world whilst maintaining the exact traceability on a single 60-kilo bag in a 19.2-ton container. and really be able to display the individuality, the individual characteristics that can exist in a cup of coffee because of the place that it's grown and the choices the person that has made it has made through that processing element of the production. And it's really exciting. And I'm sat here drinking a cup of El Paseo today from a farmer called Huber Castillo, and he has made some incredible decisions that have resulted in this coffee having taste notes of freeze-dried raspberries, and it's mind-blowing and so exciting and so removed from what people expect to taste within coffee. But just those initial choices by all the pioneers Pact in the early days enabled us to create this almost unique supply chain worldwide.
Yeah, fantastic. And I will absolutely we're gonna delve into all of this in the fullness of the discussion. I'm on your Tutti Frutti espresso today, by the way. So cheers to that.
That is one of my favorites.
Oh, it's a belter. I love fruit finishes. So anything that's got a kind of fruity note at the end, I am all on board with that.
It was a challenging blend name to come up with that one, because I'd been trying to get the blend to taste kind of like Skittles, all those really interesting, lots of different fruits in it. And I kept getting stuck because obviously, yes, we're producing an espresso, it's going to make espresso drinks, and some people will drink it as espresso, but we're based in the UK. The majority of that consumption is still going to be with milk. So I was getting stuck with how could you think of a name for this intensely fruity drink that goes with milk? And it was only when I thought about Tutti Frutti ice cream that I made the connection with the name, and that's where that one came from.
Fantastic. I just for the record, I don't think your coffee should be drunk with milk. I think they're far too good to be tarnished with another flavour. But each to their own, I suppose, in the end.
Yeah, we try and be welcoming to everybody. There's such a large majority of the UK market wants milk and sugar, so we try and offer. We have 20 coffees live at any given time, 20 plus. So there's always something in there for someone who likes a splash of milk, and then some more fruity numbers for those of us that drink it black.
Very good. Yeah. Right. Well, let's get to your journey, because I'm really always fascinated to figure out why people end up where they are and how they get there and all of that kind of thing. So take us all the way back to the beginning of your career. And the reason why for me this is important that you and I are chatting today is this is the joy of hospitality for me, is that it's not just about the front end stuff that goes on. It's about the product, services, and the supply chain behind all of that makes things come to life in hospitality. So that's, for me, that's why it's important that we're kind of all acknowledge for a moment that there's a lot of really great companies out there doing really great work, of which I think it probably is obvious by now that I put you guys in that category for sure. But yeah, how did you get here? So take us all the way back to the beginning of your career. Where did you get your start?
This is quite a funny one, actually. I was listening to your conversation with Kate Austin a couple of weeks back, and really saw parallels in it kind of ending up in the hospitality industry.
Right.
I was at uni studying mechanical engineering, about as distantly removed from the hospitality or food industry as I think you could possibly be. I left uni, I left uni hating engineering, didn't want to do anything to do with it really, and took a job with a coffee company as a delivery guy, moving boxes. We were a coffee distribution company, so we were buying coffee from Lavazza, all of the major brands you could possibly think of, and selling those boxes and delivering them around Cardiff, where I'm from. And all the time I was there, I was trying to work out what's my career going to be. And I was applying for all kinds of things. I just couldn't find a direction. I applied for the police force at one point. I just couldn't think of a place to go,
right,
or a place that I slot in. And thankfully, the owner Bernard sent me to London for the day to visit a trade show at Olympia. And I'm sure everyone that works in hospitality has been to one of these enormous trade shows with tens of thousands of people at Olympia Excel, or one of the big exhibition centers. So I'm walking around this coffee trade show. I don't like coffee at this point. I actively
right.
don't drink. I don't drink coffee. So the concept of working in the coffee industry is so distant to me. It's unbelievable. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a bitter, unpleasant drink. And I'm walking around this show trying to be involved in it, tasting various different things, not having great experience, until I stumble across a brand called Macanta, who are a green coffee trading company, who are showing off some different coffee. And I take a sip of a filter coffee black from this cup, and it tastes like Werther's Originals, like smooth, sweet toffee. And I'm stood here thinking, how can I be stood in this room of tens of thousands of people who are responsible for the coffee industry? I'm thinking, UK-wide, they're responsible for the UK-wide coffee industry, drinking this cup of coffee, and no one else is stood here going, this is incredible. This is insane. This is a completely different drink. Why doesn't all coffee taste like that?
Yeah.
And it took hold of me. Like in that moment, it was a coffee from El Salvador, from a farm called La Fani, owned by Carmen Silva, and I will never ever forget the moment that coffee touched my lips. It was incredible.
I mean, that is the absolute epitome of a sliding doors moment, right? You don't put that coffee to your lips, who knows what happens next, right? That's remarkable.
So at that moment, I just decided, I want to share this product with the world. I just was desperate to put this in people's hands because, for someone who didn't even drink coffee, didn't even really like coffee, that experience, wow, the potential was insane.
Yeah.
So I set my mind to my immediate thought was, okay, well, I need to work for this company, Macanta, and I set myself a 10-year plan to get working for Macanta as a green coffee trader, introducing this coffee to as many people as I could. And in the meantime, I started entering barista championships, the UK barista championships, and trying to understand where else I could experience that coffee product from roasters within the UK. And from that point, I was pretty single-minded. I entered the barista championships. I was already working in coffee Monday to Friday, but I opened a market stall at Riverside Market in Cardiff on my Saturday and Sunday. So I went from not liking coffee to it was my 7 days a week. It's time to really, really ingrain this in me, learn everything I possibly could, spend as much time working with coffee as I possibly could in every single way, and try and progress towards that goal of being a green coffee trader as quickly as I could.
That's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, like to go from somebody who doesn't even really like coffee into, I mean, you've almost gone from one extreme to the other into what could probably only really be described as a total coffee obsessive.
Yes, yeah, I'd definitely say I got there to the point of just forgetting everything else. It became the most important thing in my life, and the work paid off. I had my market stall. I started winning regional barista championships and gaining recognition there, making great relationships with those roasters who were selling great coffee around the UK. Came back and immediately paid off, and one of them recommended me for the role, my dream role at Macanta, within a couple of years of even discovering this existed. So I jumped my 10-year plan by 7 years.
Yeah.
So moved from Cardiff up to London and immediately became involved in that transaction and that developing relationships with farmers around the world, the understanding of the global logistics and shipping and how we move coffee around the world, and working closely with roasters in North America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Asia. Specifically, I was targeted with working with them all around espresso products because of my kind of championship level experience working with espresso and understanding how they might be able to use various coffees to bring into blends to create interesting coffee and maintain profiles.
Right. There's a great lesson here in hearing this part of your journey, because like for somebody who you've just kind of openly admitted that at that time of your life, you didn't really have a clear idea as to what you wanted to do. There wasn't a full purpose or direction or whatever. The power of having an open mind, right? Because here's somebody who doesn't like coffee, but then tries a coffee. That is like if ever there was a lesson for anybody out there listening who might be thinking to themselves, I just don't know what direction I want to go or whatever. It's like, just keep that mind open and keep yourself open to opportunity, and push yourself a little bit into, because that was maybe I kind of, what went through your head was it like, I really should probably just keep trying coffees? Was it kind of that sort of thing?
Yeah, I guess there was a level of commitment to the role that I was in. I was working Monday to Friday there. I'd been given an opportunity despite my lack of interest in the product. And I'd then been given this opportunity to come to this big event, and it was, okay, I've been given an opportunity. I should embrace it. I should really always try and follow through with as much effort and work and passion as you can muster. And it was revolutionary for me.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. The other thing that we can't just skirt over is because I'm glad you brought up your experiences at the UK Barista Championships, because I believe there's a little story in here somewhere.
Yes, yeah. I've always loved food and restaurants and eating, and although I wasn't really into coffee, I was obsessed with cooking and eating and drinking. And on a hope and a prayer, having reached the finals of the UK Barista Championship, I reached out to Heston at the Fat Duck.
As you do.
As you do. I mean, I honestly never expected any kind of reply, because I wanted to make an affogato live on stage. So one of the big news stories at the time was Heston's making ice cream with dry ice. It's this amazing experience for people. It's made fresh and has this wonderful texture. And I thought, you know what, if Heston can manage it, then it's gonna produce a pretty crazy reaction on stage and this show is at Excel in front of all these people. So I reached out, and his head chef came back and gave me not just the recipe, the list of reach out to these guys, because you're going to need to get your dry ice from this specific company.
Superb.
You're going to need a Paco Jet. Every time I watch the menu, that's the Paco Jet pops into my head, because you're going to need to turn the dry ice into a powder. I was like, wow. I mean, it's still my dream. I've still never visited. It's my dream restaurant to go to. But if put in that position, they give you the recipe for the thing that you've got to give it a crack. So I go on stage, turn my dry ice into a powder, add it to my ice cream ingredients, waiting for it to turn into this lush, silky smooth ice cream. And under the pressure, under the lights, I make a slight miscalculation, and the result is much more like dropping a couple of Mentos into 2 liters of Coke. The ice cream absolutely fired out of the top of the jug that I was making it in, all over the place. I later found out that Denise, one of the judges, had said whilst I was describing what I was going to do, and she said to one of the judges, "We're going to turn into frogs when we eat this, aren't we?" And when that happened, it only added to the hilarity of the joke she'd made to the other judges, and they were sniggering away behind me. But I was so busy trying to tidy up that I
Rectify.
missed it completely. Yeah, it was an absolute disaster. I did get a few extra points for cleaning up what was a catastrophic mess so quickly within my time. So all good, nothing lost.
Yeah, and once again though, a couple of great points raised, just like indirectly. One, that's life, right? It's not necessarily the stuff that happens, it's how you react, and the fact that you were still able to kind of forge something from the disaster,
sure,
speaks volumes. But two, even the willingness of somebody as high profile as Heston to share, right? I mean, it's been one of the biggest joys for me of the more conversations I have on the show, is that's an overriding message of the industry for sure, is this willingness to share.
Yeah. And you see it from the best people.
Yeah,
there's no the best want to share everything. There's no real hiding, because collaboration breeds innovation and growth for everybody.
Absolutely.
It was at the time, we were all competing against each other within the UK Barista Championships, but we kind of became the UK competition, but kind of became a laughing stock of the world, because people would see the UK competition and we'd all be backstage giving each other a hand, tasting each other's coffee, having a great time, and producing these. Oh, when I think about the baristas in that competition, producing exceptional performances, some of the most biggest innovations in coffee that were happening worldwide, and look at what they've gone on to do now. The UK has some almost, I think, the most, it might even be the most winners of the World Barista Championship, but our baristas are always there, because there's just this amazing collaborative attitude that really pays off.
Yeah, but it all rise together, right? And if you're, and I see this actually every year on the Great British Menu when I watch that program.
Yeah, I love
bloody big fan of that show, and you just see that yes, this is a competition, but everybody helps everybody else. Like if you're running behind, what can I do to help? It's because I'm guessing there's a psyche of yes, of course I'd love to win, but I don't want to win because somebody else has failed. I want to win because my thing was better than everybody else's thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And when everybody helps each other just make that thing be the best it can be, you finish first or you finish eighth, but you gave the best you can, and you look at the 7 people ahead of you who've just done something way better that blows your mind, then it's like, well, that's great. right?
Yeah.
Maybe it fuels the fire to try a bit harder the next time, or know that actually this is not your domain, and so now I have to go off and do something else.
And it develops those important friendships, relationships,
Yeah,
which I was thinking before I came on. Almost my entire career just comes back to just having fantastic relationships with people around the world. Like you say, whenever I love watching The Great British Menu, and I love those moments because I can see from looking back on my career how important they are for all of those individuals.
yeah, absolutely. And then everybody rises together, everybody gets better. There's more innovation comes from that, and it's just an upward cycle of wonderfulness, if that's a word.
Oh, it should be if it's not.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So how did it progress from there?
So at that point, I was moving all of the coffee Macanta shipped worldwide. So I was exporting coffee from Africa, South America, Central America, Asia, into North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and I was looking after relationships with small farmers all over Central America. And then Stephen founded Pact and came to see me and said, "Look, I need to buy some green coffee. And I've got this idea. We're going to work a way to get the freshest, best specialty coffee directly shipped to consumers at home so that they really understand and want to buy into the quality and the value, which will give us this platform to do social good." And it absolutely clicked with me. So I worked with him, and I was internal at Macanta for 18 months whilst he was selling him coffee, whilst I was continuing to kind of look after everything else. And then in 2014, he came to see me and said, "Look, I need a head of coffee, and it's probably you. But if it's not you, do you know anyone else that can do all those things? Do you know all those things that you can do?" And I thought, you know what? Like you said at the beginning, you discovered Pact through social media, and at the time there was no one in coffee, almost no one in any business in the UK was going out to find customers in this way. Pact's innovation in terms of marketing and technology back in 2012 all the way through to today has been tech leading. And my goal, going right the way back to that first cup of coffee from El Carmen that I tasted, was to share that experience with as many people as was humanly possible. So having met Steve and having seen his capacity to introduce specialty coffee to people across the length and breadth of the UK was completely aligned with my personal goal of introducing everybody to it. And we had this joint goal of using that to create social impact for coffee farmers around the world. So 2014, I made the big step of joining a startup and it's been an amazing 10 years since. Coming on board, we opened the roastery within 6 months. We had immediately direct trade relationships in Brazil and Colombia, and over the following years, developed direct trade relationships in Kenya, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Peru, and to this day have relationships that go back. In my head, I want to jump to 10 years. It's my 11th year with Pact now. We have those relationships 11 years on with the same farmers. And as we grow, we help them. They helped us to grow in the initial phases by delivering us amazing coffee. We grow their volume and we start working with other new farmers as well. And it's been spectacular. An opportunity to go and find people with potential. My mind immediately jumps to Marcus Carvalho, who owns a farm called Chapada, who when I met him in 2014, I joined Pact in July. By September, I was in Brazil. I met Marcus. He had inherited a coffee farm, so sadly, from his wife, who'd been involved in a car accident.
Oh, bless.
So she had inherited the farm from her parents. He had been a semi-professional footballer in Brazil his whole life, which doesn't earn you a significant amount of money, but he's pretty well known. His nickname is the Peacock,
right?
Because he was just so flamboyant playing in midfield. And he was trying to make this decision. He didn't have family that worked coffee farming. He didn't have anyone to show him what to do. And I met him and we had a chat and I said, "Look, clearly this farm can grow some of the best coffee in the world. I'll stand by you. We'll stand by you. We'll work with local agronomists to get you to where you want to be. If you want to do this, I'm with you the whole way." And over the last 10 years, he has produced outstanding coffee. He loves being a coffee farmer, to the point that last year he was recognized in the Cup of Excellence competition as a top 10 producer of coffee in Brazil. So the lot of coffee that he submitted to the Cup of Excellence, which is judged by 30 coffee buyers from around the world to the highest standards. And it was the 20th anniversary, I believe, of the competition. So really important competition. He placed 9th in Brazil, the largest producer of coffee in the world. This year they'll produce 60 million bags of coffee, and he produces 160 a year.
Right.
And his coffee, he's gone in 10 years from not having really produced coffee before, no experience in it, to saying, right, okay, well, let's do this together. 10 years on, he's one of the best farmers in Brazil, one of the best coffee farmers in the world.
Brilliant. Ever wondered who's behind your morning coffee? Pact Coffee works closely with some of the world's most talented smallholder farms to bring you exceptional quality and unbelievably tasty coffee. Pact always pays farmers great prices for great beans, and when fairer pay means better coffee, every sip supports changing the industry for the better. Pact Coffee is available online at pactcoffee.com, in Waitrose or on Ocado. They're also the coffee brand of choice for hundreds of UK hospitality businesses. To find out more about how Pact can fulfil your business's coffee needs, head to business.pactcoffee.com. I mean, there's so much to unpack here. I feel like we're going to need 5 hours because my mind is just racing with questions about stuff. We're not going to do 5 hours, by the way. That's for your sanity and the listener's sanity, and that would just be quite indulgent by me. But is one, first of all, the vision in the first place by your founder to see this? And my question then goes to, he must have seen something that looked like it wasn't working or it was broken, and there was definitely a very clearer way that things can be done better. How did that all come about?
Yeah, Stephen, I've talked about it many times. I've had many long conversations in the back of cars bouncing around small roads in Brazil.
Yeah.
And it's always a topic of conversation.
Yeah, you're now both laced up in bed with sciatica. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Stephen loved coffee just like me. He's a tech entrepreneur and has been since university, but he has a real love for tasty specialty coffee and did at the time. What he saw from outside, he had a completely different perspective on the industry to most people who want to open a coffee business because he was a consumer. So he saw the frustration. He loved specialty coffee. He loved all the characteristics that it had, but on a Saturday morning, he'd reach into his cupboard for a bag of coffee and, there's not quite enough in here. I'm going to have to go to the local coffee shop, local specialty coffee shop. And he lived in London, so he realised he was lucky enough to have one locally, and hope that they've got some retail beans in. And if they've got retail beans in, hope that they're fresh, and hope that they've got a grinder to grind it to how he wanted it. Mm. And he quickly realised that was too many steps. What he wanted was to sign up to a subscription to receive the best coffee in the world and have that subscription deliver him a personalized experience. So if he drank 2 cups of coffee a day, that he would receive a bag of coffee every week. If he drank 5 cups of coffee a day, he'd receive a bag of coffee every 4 days. And he started fleshing out what that looked like technically, and had the experience and the imagination to create what I still think is one of the most unique subscription companies in the world. There are very few companies where you can jump on and say, I need to receive this product every 2 days, or I need to receive this product every 90 days, because that's how I want it.
Yeah.
And over the years, we've built in all kinds of amazing tech. We've had great people work for us over the past 12 years who've innovated and created wonderful things. So we have a rating system. So as you're experiencing, you're tasting different coffees from different farmers every time you receive a delivery. If you go into your account page and you like or dislike that coffee, that impacts the next coffee we're going to send you. So in the back end, I'm entering taste and flavor notes for every single coffee that we import, the hundreds of coffees we import every year. And we have a piece of an algorithm working to work out from the coffees that are live at any given time what your order of preference is, which coffees we've sent you already, which coffees we haven't sent you, so that each time you can receive from the 20 coffees that are available, the coffee that's going to be you're going to enjoy the most and probably not have had before, or that you've had before and really love. So we want to make sure you get it again. Yeah. And for him to have that idea and the capacity to develop and build it is just
It's properly, it's
what a
visionary.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think maybe the benefit there of a tech mindset, I don't know, is that they're
yeah,
renowned. That sector is renowned as looking at stuff that exists and disrupting that. And
yeah.
if you apply that mindset to this example, I suppose there's a lot of that in there. There was something that did exist, but it wasn't fit for his purpose.
Yeah. And I guess that looking at the perspective of someone who's not in the industry, rather than, so many businesses, especially I guess within hospitality, are built off the back of people who are in the business. So you look at the problems from the perspective of someone in the business, rather than stepping out and trying to look at those problems as a consumer and thinking of new ways to overcome them.
Yeah.
And it's really set us aside as a business over the past 12 years, and it's easy to bring the experience in, the internal experience they did with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gives us, every meeting has got interesting insight.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Well, we'll come on to one of them in a minute, I think, because there's definitely a story for that we have to explore. The other thing that I found really really intriguing is that the chap that you mentioned in Brazil. Forgive me, I don't recall his name, but
Marquinhos.
how do you find people like that? Because I suppose equally, there's one thing to find them, but two, to see the potential, and and how do you know that they're actually going to be capable to grow the quality required that you want? Because that fundamentally is, as we spoke about all the way back at the beginning, it is one thing to have a wonderful idea, but the idea would fall on its face if the quality of the end product was not where it should be. So yeah, I think it was probably about 12 questions to you in one there.
So as luck would have it, it turned out when I did find out that I enjoyed coffee, I actually have a reasonably significant tolerance for caffeine as well.
Okay.
So it's not about stumbling over people who have capacity to grow the best coffee in the world. It's kind of more linked to, if you taste enough cups of coffee, you can pick out the ones who have the capacity to be outstanding. So when I'm traveling to Honduras or Kenya or Salvador, on my second day having landed, because there's all sorts of weird stuff that goes on with your factory bulb when you're on a plane. Good reason not to book a nice restaurant on your first day of your holiday, because
God, I didn't know that.
Your all sorts of bits of your face swell up when you're on the plane, and it's
Well,
really challenging to detect all the different characteristics.
But you're turning this into an educational podcast now as well. My God.
So my second day of my trip, I'll be tasting 60, 100 different coffees.
Oh wow! Right.
And if I'm tasting 60, 100 different coffees, I'm tasting 5 cups of each of those coffees.
God almighty! I'm already thinking I need to have a toilet right there.
Yeah, regular toilet breaks are mandatory. Each one of those, so that would be broken down into tables of 10. Each table of 10 takes you around an hour to taste. If you're tasting 100 coffees, so you can choose to spit or swallow when you're tasting coffee, cupping coffee. I have just always swallowed the coffee because it gives me a better impression of overall characteristic, and I have a very high tolerance for caffeine.
And it's nice.
But I might be, and it tastes great. Even the stuff that's at this phase, even the stuff that's not going to be incredible is really enjoyable. There's so much potential. There's so much good we have the capacity to do. I could probably go back and work with every one of the farms, and it's one of my biggest drivers for trying to grow Pact as quick as we can, as big as we can. Is there are so many people who have the potential to grow the best coffee, who currently live in poverty, who by growing our addressable market, growing the people that want to interact with our coffee every day, we can begin to help beyond the hundreds or thousands of people we're currently helping right now. So I taste all those coffees and then go and visit the farms. We work out which ones have the best potential, which ones have potential for cup profiles, which are going to match what our current kind of demands are, based on all those customers liking and disliking coffees on the website, which gives us an understanding for what kind of cup profiles they really enjoy. So I'm going out there trying to work with farmers to fulfill those profiles going forward. And over the years, that's resulted in relationships with hundreds, thousands of farmers around the world who produce outstanding coffee. Like I said, the coffee I'm drinking right now, El Paseo, it's available on the website right now, and it is outstanding, is the result of Hoover getting involved in processing and understanding to a level which goes so far beyond traditional coffee producing systems. He's a second generation coffee farmer. So coffee goes through a fermentation process, which most people don't know. The fermentation process that's used predominantly within coffee worldwide is more similar to what you'd see in natural wine than traditional winemaking, the winemaking we're most familiar with.
Yeah.
So there's very little control globally over fermentation temperatures, over types of yeasts used, but we can yield really interesting developed characteristics from these coffees, but rarely super controlled. And then, by working with farmers, by teaching them small elements of control over fermentation processes, which are low cost and easily managed, we can get them to a place where they can consistently produce really high quality, delicious, differentiated coffee, has characteristics from the terroir of the farm and has characteristics from those yeasts that are naturally existing on the skins of the cherries when they're picked from the trees, and create really unique, delicious characteristics, all the way through to something like Paseo, where Huber is using a Brix meter to check the sugar content of the cherries, which are surrounding the coffee beans before they're picked. He then uses a saltwater solution to sterilize all the naturally occurring yeasts on the cherries. He then ferments them within the beans within the cherry for 24 hours. He then depulps the beans, so we have coffee cherries in Pergamino, and he does a further fermentation using a lactic bacteria, and then washes that and dries it over 2 weeks and produces something that is really outstanding. And this is a fantastic coffee. Lots of stuff that doesn't have this level of involvement, also outstanding. But what he produces here is a coffee with supreme clarity. For us as a company trying to engage people with specialty coffee, trying to get them interested in it, being able to say to someone, this tastes like freeze-dried raspberries, and people just go, yes, it does.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even sure I've had it yet. I think I might be ordering that as soon as we're done here.
I hope so. It's the time-old problem people face with getting people to buy into quality wine. How easy is it for someone to grasp that complexity, that the profile that's in the glass and the cup? As soon as people begin to really interact with that, they begin to really perceive value, and that's what takes you to the next step. And for us, that's the most important bit, because it's what enables us to engage people with wanting to pay more for quality, which enables us to pay significantly more to coffee farmers around the world, and move them from living in poverty to having a really prosperous life. Moving kids. I've met Mauricio Vega in Colombia back in 2015. He was 16 years old. And he was saying to me, I can't wait to turn 18. I'm going to save up. I'm going to buy a motorbike. As soon as I'm 18, I'm out of here. I'm moving to the city. I'm going to get a job in a call center. I'm going to have a salary every month and get away from this coffee farm. He lived in a coffee farm in a house on the farm with 3 walls. There weren't even 4 walls. The living room of the house looked out onto the farm, but it rains in Wheeler hard every day. Like, I'm from Wales. It rains hard.
Well, I'm from Scotland, so yes, we're pitching to the converted here, yeah.
So we jump forward 10 years, and over those brief 2 years, he saw enough of the change in lifestyle that selling specialty coffee to a company like Pact can have, and it completely changed his outlook. And he worked on the farm. His dad gave him a loan. He now has his own to buy a coffee farm. He now has his own farm, La Pedregosa. His first crop we bought from him, and he is a new age of coffee farmer who has the potential of only ever having to sell his coffee as specialty, not having to bring up a family in poverty, but actually bring them up in prosperity. And every coffee farmer, no matter the grade they sell their coffee at, has immense pride in the product they're producing every day, and they want the recognition for that. That's why selling the coffee transparently, as well as it being great for you, being able to taste the individual characteristics and the clarity of the taste and flavor in the cup. Also, it's important to give the recognition to these families, to these people around the world that have produced amazing coffee. So Mauricio, at the age of 22, 23, was seeing his coffee sold in London, in the UK, and was immensely proud. His name's on the bag, and people it's one of the great things about social media. He can go and he can see people screaming and shouting about how amazing his coffee is. And that's his perspective on coffee growing now. He had a childhood growing up and seeing some of the worst of it. The coffee prices, even if you're selling a certified coffee that on the shelf might appear ethical, were below the cost of production through the 2000s and early 2010s. He's never had to run his business, his coffee producing business in that way. And it's exciting to be able to do that for more and more people. I don't know if that's your question was, how do you go and find
I can't even remember
coffee
what the
farmers?
question was, to be honest. But yeah.
I've kind of jumped around a load there.
I'm totally fascinated, though. The thing about that kind of full cycle thing for me is it comes back to exactly what we were talking about, even in your barista championship days. It's a way more collaborative approach to business, right? It's everybody is winning in this process. This is not, we're railroading you on price, so we're going to win and you're going to win less. And that to me is golden, and and should be the way that business is. I mean, it's rightly or wrongly, that's not happened over time, but I do feel like there's way more companies that have that mindset now towards doing business in that way, because and you guys are, for the time that you started this, are probably maybe even one of the first to even think this way, so that you end up finding yourself in a situation whereby you probably look back in 20 years time and go, do you know what, we kind of led the way a little bit in getting people to think differently in terms of how they did business. So it's not even, I suppose, just about the social impacts you're having with the people whose lives you're elevating by paying them fairly and working collaboratively with them. It's the knock-on effect to you're kind of blueprinting what's possible, and I think that's massively powerful.
Thanks. It's been a hard journey, and to do it, we started as a startup, and really proud to say we're profitable and running self-sufficiently, which is a challenge when you commit to growth and to doing the right thing at the same time and delivering value. But I think we've set ourselves a foundation to be able to continue doing it long into the future.
Yeah. So the saying that I wrote down that just popped into my head as we were talking, that good business is hard, especially when you're looking to change something, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. And it's the willingness to push through when things are tough. That you look. That's the moment where you look back on in time to come and go, God, look how far we've come. And I think you guys are already on that journey, right? You obviously now have your business arm as well, so you're not just impacting the lives of a regular consumer like me, but you're impacting the coffee menus of businesses within hospitality as well.
Yeah. Internally we sat down and said, look, if we want to have the biggest possible impact we can have for coffee producers worldwide, we need to be aiming to optimize every cup of coffee in the UK. And in 2018, 2019, the most obvious place where there was a big problem was offices.
Right. Yeah.
I think back then we were all in offices a lot more, and there were a lot of kitchens with really terrible coffee.
Stock standard instant.
Yeah. And millions of cups of coffee being drunk across the UK that were bad for coffee farmers. They're being paid poorly for the coffee that was being consumed. They're bad for the people in the offices consume them because they didn't enjoy it. It was just a brown drink. And actually that we managed to find a load of great statistics that showed they were bad for business as well, bad for those businesses who were serving them.
Right.
Pulled all that together and created some really innovative solutions for delivering the highest quality coffee within offices, within break rooms for people. And it's just so exciting. We now work really closely with Lexington. They're a hospitality provider to some of the biggest, most prestigious offices around the UK. And together we have dramatically increased the quality of coffee being served. You can go into the offices that they're partnered with now, and they're serving coffee to the same standard as the leading specialty coffee shops across the UK.
Yep.
And you just think that is a hell of a shift. That is a really, really amazing shift.
Yeah, but that is actually also from a business's perspective. Like, if you're serving really great coffee to your team, basically, is what we're talking about, is that, one, from Lexington's perspective, what's then the need for this person to go out onto the high street and get a coffee somewhere? You're keeping them in the office, so maybe helps productivity. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, but again, we're just creating a win solution. I can't tell you the emphasis I place on a quality coffee, and I can't be the only person out there who feels the same. Whereby, if I go somewhere, and a lot of my job that I do, I'm out and about meeting people in coffee shops and hotel lobbies and all of that kind of thing. And if somebody serves me a rank coffee, I'm not going back there. That's the impact. So it has to be the same in the workforce as well, and there'll be some part of the deep psyche that says that my employer does not serve me good coffee. So it's probably a bit of an extreme example. I'm not going to stay here forever, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
all of these things, they just create the little question marks.
But even if you are going to stay forever, you might then have your 3 coffees a day from the coffee shop down the road, and you're out of the office for 2 hours trying to get that coffee.
Yeah.
Great for the hospitality industry, but not so useful internally.
Yeah.
We support amazing coffee shops across the UK as well, hotels, restaurants. Probably my biggest bugbear, being a lover of going out to eat and engaging with the hospitality sector, is the quality of coffee that has historically been served in some of the best restaurants in the UK. But luckily, we're beginning to see some seed change there. In I can't think of another category in a Michelin grade kitchen where an ingredient is sourced at a lower quality than people are regularly buying within UK households. And for coffee, unfortunately, that's often the case. It's often the case worldwide. It's not a UK problem, but I think it poses a really exciting, interesting next step for collaboration between the specialty coffee industry and hotels and restaurants.
Without question. I mean, if you think about it from even just a pure hospitality perspective, we always talk about generally the last impression of somebody staying in a hotel is the breakfast, and how often do you stay in a stock standard place where the breakfast is a bit below par. Mm-hmm. Same principle in a Michelin environment. You've just had this amazing experience, and if you end on a low of not a particularly great coffee, then that's the last thing you send them on their way with. It's so it's the opportunity seems there for sure.
Immense. It's immense.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I'm very, very conscious of your time. Thank you very much for giving us so much time so far. A couple of things I just want to touch on. Some of them will be quick, I promise. One thing was, and actually I saw you do, I think it was another podcast I saw you do where you talked about builder's tea, but also I noted from my own notes that you would put in jail never to be used ever again the word Americano. And now, as an Americano drinker, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure. I guess there's two separate. There are 2 very common drinks within the UK, but 2 quite separate reasons. Builder's tea, I really enjoy tea, but I tend to drink elusive tea. I think the UK is renowned for tea consumption, but unfortunately that has been dramatically economized, rationed. The way that we consume tea, the qualities which we're served by the kind of big tea industry, and the expectation on the other side, the pricing of tea by consumers, has resulted in tea bags that are full of triage is the technical term.
Nice. I like that.
The quality of triage is low quality teas. It has a very high, your contract sign off for a triage or for a low quality tea involves bits of twigs, elements of the leaf, which are not going to brew tea. There's an expectation in the UK that tea brews fast. The average time the tea is brewed for, a builder's tea is brewed for in the UK, is 17 seconds. A cup of tea just takes longer to brew than that.
You can't get anything out in 17 seconds, can you?
Exactly. And so the product is developed to create enough colour within the liquid within that time to give the impression that someone's drinking a cup of tea, but really you're not getting much of the true experience. And it's the spillover of elements of the coffee industry that I'm frustrated with. When we import green coffee, there are levels of quality in which you allow various defects to come through. So stones, twigs, coffee beans that have the fermentation's gone wrong on them during the process. They've been broken or chipped, or they've had an insect bite that's damaged the bean. All these things are part of kind of the depths of my role, which is working out how we contract the coffee to achieve the highest quality standards, deliver the most perfect, beautiful cups of coffee, whilst allowing farmers to earn as much money as humanly possible. And ensuring that we get as little of that whilst shipping as much of the product as possible at as high a price as we can enables that. And unfortunately, within the wider coffee and tea business, selling coffee and tea at those really low quality standards is the norm.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at a shelf in the supermarket and you're comparing all the prices, unfortunately you're not comparing like for like. If you were to be trying to do the same thing in front of the apples in the fruit and veg section, you'd be looking at a load of apples. You'd be looking at bags of apples with apples that were broken in half, with worms coming out of them and rotting, and it's obvious to your eye. But when you're looking at a bag of ground coffee on a supermarket shelf, it's impossible. Even I can't look at a bag of ground coffee and tell you what the contract standard was for it.
Yeah,
it's quite challenging with a bag of whole beans. And yeah, those frustrations that builders team really add up.
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
Let me tell you why I recommend Pact's coffee subscriptions. As someone who lives for great tasting coffee, but whose day-to-day schedule varies wildly, I just don't think you can top Pact. It's the most flexible subscription around. You can get unbelievably unique and great tasting coffee delivered directly to you at a frequency that fits around your life, whether that's every day, every other day, or even every other month. And it's fantastic value for money. And to cement that statement, Pact are offering Hospitality Meets listeners 25% off their first, third and fifth orders. All you have to do is sign up to a subscription at pactcoffee.com and enter the code HospitalityMeets at the checkout. And details of this will also be in the show notes and our newsletter, so be sure to sign up to that. But for now, let's get back to the conversation.
The Americano is a slightly different one.
Right, yeah, well, we'll move on to that in a second. It's funny you mentioned the tea industry. We actually had on a few episodes ago a lady called Roshana Gamampilla from the Devagiri estate in Sri Lanka, who is looking to basically make social impact in much the same way in terms of, they're just focusing on their own estate. They have bought an estate, but she was telling me about the process to market of how they get their product to the market and the cost differentials in terms of what they were getting versus what then the buyer would get. And then, of course, there's 20 different middlemen in the middle of that before it gets anywhere near the consumer. And so they're creating a model whereby they want to get their product, in a very more direct route to the consumer. And it just blows my mind that we're here we are in 2025 now, and there's still stuff like this entrenched in the way stuff is, and people are being kept in poverty because of a system that isn't really working. Well, it's working, and
there's so much money in it. The coffee, the tea industries in the UK worldwide are worth billions. They're enormous machines. Yeah,
and you cut out all the middle people, and actually you can still deliver the value to the consumer. It's there's because less people are taking their piece through the process, I suppose.
I guess comparing it back to wine, like I was saying, the farmers we're working with are being recognized as the best farmers producing coffee in the countries they produce coffee. The best, they're being recognized as the best coffee farmers in the world. If I was to bring you a bottle of wine from the best estates in the world, you'd be talking about that wine costing thousands and thousands of pounds a bottle. Where you might be comparing it to what an £8 for a standard supermarket wine, an £8 a bottle of wine. And we're talking about a supermarket coffee costing £4 for 250 grams. You can buy Pact on the shelf in Waitrose for, and now I'm testing myself. It's about £7 or £8.
I was going to say, I'll let you off if you don't get it exactly right, but it is about £7 or £8.
Yeah, it's about double to buy coffee from the best coffee farmers on the planet to buying coffees that unfortunately have this elongated supply chain with lower quality standards and less social impact for the coffee farmers who are really creating all the value. I get to take a lot of credit for people come and say to me, "Oh, Pact Coffee, it's fantastic, tastes amazing." It's the work of the farmers that does that. We just do our best at the roastery to amplify the delicious characteristics that exist in it.
Yeah. Oh, you're doing okay, by the way, on that front. Yeah, Americano. What's the sitch?
So the Americanos are really interesting. I love a long black coffee. This morning I've brewed this with my filter coffee brewer at home. It's a gentle, soft process with lots of room for tolerance. I guess this jumps back to my engineering days.
Tolerance is definitely an engineering word.
Yes. So through the eyes of what's happening within the brew process. I was, like I said, a competitive barista in the UK. At one point, one year, my espresso had the highest espresso score in the UK. So I know a thing or two about brewing espresso. And actually, even being a great barista, even with the best equipment to hand, walking up to an espresso machine and trying to brew a perfect espresso is very challenging. You have to really perfect the process and consistently apply it to achieve an outstanding expression of the beans which you've roasted. Now, because of the process that an espresso needs to be able to brew, because of the pressures involved, very high brew pressure, very high overall brew temperature as well, and very short brew time, you have to make certain changes to the roast profiling to make the coffee slightly more soluble than you'd use for other brew methods like cafetiere, V60 drip, AeroPress, etc. So you're already making one slight alteration to the coffee to enable it to brew in this way. If you then get your Americano, your espresso brewing process, you get your extraction out by 3 seconds on a espresso, that means you're 10% out. If your dose is out by half a gram, because of the final yield, your dose to yield ratio is dramatically changed. And this completely changes. And when I say changes, I mean moves a very distant from optimum the final profile of your espresso. And the espresso drink is really nice. It's a really useful concentration to be able to add into things like milk or milk alternatives to create really wonderful drinks. I love the body and the viscosity it creates in a double espresso. But actually, if you're looking to drink a long black coffee, just adding water to that, it doesn't give the same representation as something that's brewed over a longer period of time. With more soft brewing, you can give the coffee time to extract evenly in a larger brewer. You're much more likely to individually extract each ground of coffee perfectly in a really good brewer brewed well, because the tolerance is, if you're 10% out on your brew time on a V60, that's a 3-minute brew time. You can be out by 30-40 seconds, and it's much easier to stay within tolerance and for people to give themselves a better experience. And alongside that, it's a huge investment for people to buy espresso equipment at home. A V60, we actually give them away free because it's the paper filter within it gives you a higher level of clarity. It absorbs some of the lipids from the coffee. It prevents some of the fines getting into the final cup, which gives you higher cup clarity. The cost per paper filter is minimal, and it gives you that final, more elegant result with higher cup clarity and generally more enjoyment. It's a really wonderful thing. You know where the name Americano comes from?
Do you know? I think I did know this. It's somewhere in the pit of my brain somewhere, but you'll have to tell me.
It's when the Americans were in Italy during the Second World War.
Yeah, because I just saw it on the SAS.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that show. I love
brilliant.
that show. Yeah. They were, coffee culture in the US at that point was all drip, all long black filter coffee. Espresso isn't a very old thing. It's, conceptually, really, it's just over 100 years old. And just prior to World War II, espresso had really taken off in Italy. But they were serving these much stronger espresso-like drinks. And so the American soldiers would ask for that espresso to be watered down. So when they added the water to the espresso, they called it Americano.
Very good,
because that's what the Americanos were drinking.
Yeah, I told you. Yeah, educational podcast. This absolutely is. This is brilliant. In fact, I did make a note as well. You're obviously a humble guy, because you wrote on your notes, "I'm pretty okay at brewing espresso." I have a feeling that you're probably a little bit better than that. But yeah, it sounds like you espresso is your brew of choice.
I love brewing espresso. It's almost meditative for me. That opportunity to stand in front of an espresso machine and engage with coffee Because if you walk up to an espresso machine and just start brewing espresso, you can work to produce a good coffee. But actually being in an environment where you've got a big, busy turnover of customers who you can engage with and have a conversation with and really get into the flow of brewing espresso, you might be talking 90 minutes, but you can hit a level of espresso perfection. I've got goosebumps thinking about it. I can remember times in my life just stood on, actually generally on the banks of the River Taff, looking at the Millennium Stadium, especially on the rugby weekends, hundreds of people coming through and just making these wonderful espressos and just being at one with the espresso machine, the grinder, and the extraction being absolutely perfect. And so often in training people how to make coffee, we say, oh, well, you got to make as long as the espresso comes out in 30 seconds, it'll be fine. But actually, when you get to this point of the espresso machine kind of chugging along like a steam train, it reaches, I guess, again, going back to engineering, it reaches a point where the temperature stability becomes so perfect that every shot can be the same. Your grinder, when it's working, heats up, and then you get a stability in the gap in the grinder blades, which is different to how it operates when you're just pulling the odd shot every now and then. All these things begin to come together. In Italian, they call it the 4Ms of coffee, and you feel it, and it's a completely. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky I get to see you talking about this because you're very animated about when you get into your flow around this stuff. Just that, for those who are listening, sorry you didn't get to see that part of it, but you're clearly doing what you were supposed to be doing. Like, I mean, even if you think about it, the fact that you started on an engineering route, that's kind of served you well in this role, probably, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, there are many days I look back and it's just this. I'm very lucky. That's all I can think. At the roastery, we produce roast profiles for every individual coffee that we bring into the UK, which means looking at the rate of rise of curves of the temperature of the roaster whilst the coffee is in there, so we can understand how we're going to be changing the acidity profile, how we're going to be increasing the complexity of it whilst managing the intensity and developing the body and sweetness in the right ways. And every time I look at one of those graphs, I sit back and think, oh, those maths lessons really did pay off.
Yeah.
I'm sat there looking at rate of rise graphs below actual graphs and thinking, yeah, it's all just come together. I'm lucky to say I was in the right place at the right time in every aspect of my career, from happening to have studied engineering and then moved into coffee, but also being lucky enough that when I had this moment of understanding that my career lay within coffee, I happened to be doing that at a period where the UK market was really beginning to embrace specialty coffee. I remember writing flat white onto my blackboard at the market for the first time, and no one knowing what it was. And a now friend, then someone I'd never met, Lydia, walking up. She'd just moved over from New Zealand. And I said, oh, how's your day going? She said, oh, it's all right. And I heard a Kiwi accent. I said, oh, it sounds like you need a flat white. Said, you have flat whites? And it all coming together. The likelihood of all these things is, incredible. I'm a lucky boy.
Wow. You make your own luck and all that. You still got to be open to the opportunity as we come back to that point, if you hadn't tried that coffee on that time when you and I are maybe not talking here today and all of that. And actually, your little story there about the Kiwi speaks to a wonderful line that I wrote down from within the question I ask around 3 reasons why somebody should come into hospitality. And the first one I just thought was wonderful. Acts of service are a love language. And that little scenario there, whereby somebody who didn't know they were craving a flat white, but then somebody gives them that opportunity to have something that's familiar to them in a moment where they probably need something that's familiar to them, it speaks exactly to that line. Acts of service are a love language. And that will be a quote that I will take with me for as long as I can remember, because I think it's true. I think it's a great reflection of what hospitality is and can be.
Yeah, I can't remember what all the other love languages are, if I'm honest, but it's the one that sticks with me every day. It's certainly a way I show love to people, but I think it's such an integral part of the hospitality experience, but also the thing that you can deliver. And it's every single element of hospitality, from the highest, best quality restaurant in the world through to someone handing someone a coffee on the high street on your local high street,
Yeah.
through to the service in a hotel, the turn down service in a hotel, all of it. You interact with it and you feel, and it's special. And in the case of Pact, I'm really lucky, and every day I get to think about it as an act of service to the consumers, waking up and putting a smile on people's face when they brew our coffee and understand where it's come from. And at the other end, the act of service of ensuring that those farmers have received a prosperous income and are having a better quality of life because of the service I can offer them in terms of getting the coffee out to consumers.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. You definitely put a smile on this consumer's face. That's for sure. One last thing, it's another story because, and we talked about earlier on that good business can be tough, and you definitely have kind of highlighted that the route to success in Pact's terms is not one very clear, wonderful line upwards. There's always little bumps in the road, and I want to talk about some of those bumps now in the form of the stories of, when you're going into communities that are, I suppose, deemed to be unsafe. If you went onto, perhaps the UK government's website that said, don't go here because of X, Y, Z. You're going to these places to work with farmers, and there was a story that you very kindly shared on the forum about one such excursion. So please enlighten us with the stuff that you kind of have to go through as well. It's not all just wonderful and perfect.
Yeah, I think to do this role, and lots of people say, "Oh, you've got my dream job," and it's certainly my dream job. But you've really got to love coffee, and it's got to be a part of you to do it like I do it. I have traveled to every one of the most dangerous cities in the world in the past 20 years, every single one on the list. And certainly now, especially with a young family, security and safety are very high priorities. And I'm a lot better at managing that than maybe I was early in my career.
Yeah.
Going back a few years now, I was working in El Salvador. San Salvador was the most dangerous city in the world at the time. You're talking hundreds of murders regularly, and really sadly seeing bodies on the street. It's
crikey, right?
Really, really tough.
Yeah.
Gang violence at the time was exceptionally high and exceptionally problematic within coffee farms. Coffee gangs would try and take over coffee farms. There were farmers that were working with who'd been kidnapped. Bulletproof cars on the streets of El Salvador are commonplace.
Yeah.
I'd had a weekend spare, so I went to the Pacific coast. I'd never seen the Pacific at this point in my career, so went over there and spent a weekend on the beach, a hostel. Brilliant. Made some really good friends. They were working for Doctors Without Borders and the Red Cross, so we were just on the beach having some fun. And I was going to get a taxi back to San Salvador, but luckily they offered me a lift. So as you do, we left with plenty of time because it's not really safe to be driving around the suburbs of San Salvador after dark. There was a lot of traffic, so we got stuck in the dark in traffic on the way to San Salvador, and 4x4 comes herring down the wrong side of the road and pulls in front of us, hitting the car in front of us, which was a worrying sight to see to start with, until it became quite blatantly obvious that the guy in the 4x4 was a gang member. He had all the big signs. There was an enormous number painted on the front of the car, and he was wearing a red t-shirt, which is another sign, and starts getting irate about there having been an accident caused, apportioning blame to the car in front of us, a little to us. We had nothing to do with it. Jumps on his phone, and within not much time at all, a couple of motorbikes arrive, each with two people with automatic guns.
God.
And they all begin rowing with each other. And we're sat in the car thinking, well, we can't physically drive. We're blocked in. We can't drive off.
Yeah, it's not like you can just get out the car and run, right? Because that's not an option.
Yeah, it really makes you think on life. At that point, really think what's important to you. I have a go bag I've always had a go bag with me at all times. So I changed my shoes, ready to run and to get out there to do whatever I could. And then one of the guys on the motorbike starts pointing at our car aggressively.
Oh God.
And then we realized that they're pointing to the Red Cross logo on the side of the car. And the guys on the mopeds speed off. The Red Cross has an amazing reputation. They're doing amazing things worldwide. But in Central America. They do a lot of work in prisons, a lot of work everywhere, and they actually have no one within any gang is allowed to do anything to anyone from the Red Cross.
Wow.
From the top of all of their organizations, because their work is amazing, and they work very hard in prisons to, despite all the problems and all the bad things that happen, to ensure people are healthy and safe and secure in them. And it's by virtue of having been sat in a Red Cross 4x4 that we weren't just shot up and left for dead on the side of the road.
Yeah. God. Yeah. But I mean, was there any point where you were thinking to yourself, what is this career path that I have chosen that has led me to this point, in terms of the danger and threat that you were probably feeling in that moment?
I thought I had no regrets. I just thought, I have lived, and I still to this day, I've lived a wonderful, blessed life. I've got to see amazing things and meet amazing people and have fantastic relationships with people all over the world. I was doing my dream. I was living my dream, and I knew I needed to get home and propose to my now wife, because the most important thing was that she knew that I loved her beyond anything else in the world. And there was no doubt in her mind, if anything ever happened to me, that I was completely committed to her and loved her. So that was the top of my priority list. But I honestly, I was at an age where I didn't have much dependent in terms of dependencies, and I knew I'd lived hard and worked hard and had a great life, and it was worth being out there doing what I do to try and make the change in the world that we get to make.
Yeah.
Now I do have dependencies now. I've got a beautiful daughter, and certainly want to spend as many years of my life as I can with my family, whilst continuing to be able to do good and grow Pact and influence and have as positive an impact on as many people as I can around the world now. So I'm very cautious about our security. It doesn't stop me getting out to the places we need to work, but things are a bit more leveled up than they were back then.
Yeah. Well, nothing like a gun-toting gangster to put things into perspective for you a little bit, I suppose.
For sure.
Yeah. My words, and I suppose as well also highlights, therefore, just how valuable your work is beyond what we get to experience as consumers in terms of what you're doing. But actually, if these places are riddled in gangland, this is one of the ways that you help battle it, right? Is just give people opportunity. Is give people the opportunity to get themselves out of a situation that doesn't really give them many choices.
Especially the young people.
Yeah.
The kids of school age, growing up in poverty, there is enormous pressure across so many of the different countries from different gangs to get involved with gangs. It's seen as a way out of poverty by people. We've got to be able to show them that there's a way that they can have really fulfilled, profitable, prosperous lives working on coffee farms and be recognized for that. Give them I don't know if you ever read the book Freakonomics.
I have, yes.
They talk about the concept of people getting into gangs because the role model is the person at the top of the chain, and they see that as the opportunity to be the leader, the wealthy person, the well-known person, the person with all the respect. That's why giving the respect to all these farmers is so important. The kids can see they can come through, and it's not a 1 in 1,000 chance. The more we grow Pact, the more of these bits of recognition we can give, the more we can so dramatically change the level of move someone from poverty to prosperity so easily and so well. It's a really exciting thing, and we've got to keep moving them away from it, because unfortunately the gang side is still a pretty horrible outcome. Is a really horrible outcome, and it really is still there in different guises in all countries around the world.
Yeah, no doubt. I feel like we should end on a high somehow, but I don't know. Actually, do you know, this whole conversation for me has been a high. I was already a proper fanboy of what you're doing, and your coffee just tastes great. So that is, as I said many times, it's the fundamental reason why you're doing it. But actually, if you're doing the work that you're doing as well, I don't know, it just maybe it makes the coffee taste better. I don't know, because you're having a genuine impact on the world, and it with every sip that you take.
Yeah. It's every morning I get to sit downstairs with my wife. I brew a coffee. My daughter goes in her little kitchen and plays with her little coffee toys, and she makes coffee as well. And we get to spend a moment traveling the world just by tasting the cups of coffee that are in front of us. And I get a lot. I have to taste coffee every single day. Every morning.
God, that must be hellish.
Every cup is from a different place, and it gives us the opportunity to travel the world through taste every morning, which is just such a nice way to start the day.
Yeah.
In the height of summer or in the depths of cold, wet, dark winter, be able to start the day with a different profile of coffee, with you send out coffee cards so everyone knows exactly where they've come from. They understand the stories that the farms we're working with. That couple of minutes of experience in that is really wonderful and really enjoyable.
Brilliant. Yeah. And there we are. That's the positive note to end on. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We've gone way over what I ever anticipated, but I find what you do unbelievably fascinating. Oh, and we didn't even talk about decaf. We should probably talk about decaf, shouldn't we?
We should talk about decaf.
Okay. If you've got the time, I've got the time.
Decaf. Yeah, for sure. Decaf, what a drink. So like decaf, there's loads of people that want to drink decaf for loads of different reasons. Caffeine is really good for you, by the way. I should say that. Medically, it's like coffee is great for you. 5 cups a day. There's plenty of studies now that are not backed by enormous pharmaceutical industry or backed by other people that are showing.
We don't need to go there, that's for sure.
Yeah. Caffeine's good for you. If you can't drink caffeine, decaf coffee is a wonderful thing. Going back not very long, unfortunately, decaf customers were dramatically underserved, because what would happen, importers would bring coffee into the UK. The coffees that weren't cupping well, didn't taste good on a cupping table, wouldn't sell. And then it come to the point where you're like, oh, we need to get some coffee decaffeinated. Oh, let's send that one. It's not selling. We'll get it decaffeinated, and then it'll be the only decaf coffee we've got to sell. So then we'll get rid of it. We'll clear the books of it, which is really rubbish, because it means not only was the coffee that was decaffeinated the coffee that everyone liked the least to start with, it's probably been sat in a warehouse for a year, getting bad, aging, which is a bad thing in coffee, until it's decaffeinated. And then people get decaf and think, why does this taste so bad? You go to a coffee shop that they're using pre-ground coffee for the decaf espresso instead of having a grinder. All kinds of bad things. So when I joined Pact 11 years ago, I'd been responsible for the decaf process of all the coffee we decaffeinated for global consumption when I was at the counter. So I said, screw this. We're going to buy the same coffee we buy and just have it decaffeinated. So we launched decaf going back, I guess, 10 years ago. It takes a little while to get decaffeinated.
Yeah.
And since then, we just buy the same grade. We actually now have the coffee imported, decaffeinated on the way to export. So it's the freshest you can decaffeinate coffee. It comes off the farm, goes to a decaffeination plant. We use a ethyl acetate decaffeination process, which is they use sugarcane. They ferment sugarcane to create ethyl acetate to decaffeinate the coffee, and then export it out of the country. We're literally landing decaf with exactly the same crop, green coffee, from exactly the same farm, single estate. And it's amazing. It tastes fantastic. And the ethyl acetate process almost increases the sweetness component of the profile. So you end up with these coffees that have, like, for a decaf consumer, they have the same coffee profile. They're getting the same experience. And I'm really happy to say that across specialty coffee, that has become more of the norm. So if you know anyone that drinks decaf, or if you drink decaf in the afternoons, take a look at our decaf, but also take a look at what's available within specialty coffee now, because it's revolutionarily different. One of the biggest quality steps anyone drinking coffee can take. It's a really exciting element of the journey. And I feel so bad for decaf drinkers, because they're generally charged more for the product everywhere, and then given an experience which is so dramatically bad, where there is now the opportunity to deliver. It's funny because I'm getting excited about delivering the same quality as we normally get out, but I just really want to give these consumers a really great level of service. I want to give them a really great quality product, and I feel like they're so often overlooked. I just want to ensure they can get a good experience too, experience too.
Yeah, I'm quite right. I've dabbled in the world of decaf as well. I have realised I am one of the lucky ones. Like you mentioned, if you drink decaf in the afternoon, I could drink a fully caffeinated coffee at 11 o'clock at night and still sleep really well. So
the same.
Yeah. Sorry to anybody who's listening to that, but sorry, I should say. I love my sleep. But no, that's great. I am going to wrap it up now. I literally could talk to you all day, as we're probably proving with this particular show. But no, I wish you guys all the very best. I think what you've done is absolutely remarkable and stands for all the great and good that what business can be. And look forward to staying involved and continuing to have your coffee in my mornings.
Thank you so much. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. Really enjoy it, and
Bless.
I feel really privileged to be allowed to come and talk to you.
Oh God, no, that's my privilege for sure. Here we are, smoke blowing time again. I think it's definitely time to go now, isn't it?
Yeah,
nice one. Thanks so much, Will.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. And there we have it. I don't know about you, but I've learned so much more about the world of coffee, and I hope you can agree what Pact are doing is just bloody brilliant. They are, of course, one of our show partners at the moment, so don't forget to take advantage of their special offer, details of which are in the show notes. And I'll see you all again on Friday for another cheeky bonus. See you then.